Welcome to the Bookish Hour with your hosts, Sarah E. Burr and J.C. Kenney. And we are live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Bookish Hour. I'm Sarah Burr.
And I am J.C. Kenney. Happy Baby Friday, folks. We have a fun, fabulous guest with us tonight. So, Sarah, I think it's time to get bookish.
Yes, we have got a gripping series to dive into this evening, folks. We are in a police procedural, rural detective, sheriff, just like such a cool, gritty, gripping read. And we are delighted to have its author, Winter Austin, with us here this evening. Winter, welcome to the Bookish Hour.
Thank you for having me.
We are so excited to talk about your newest mystery, which is called A Requiem for the Dead. But it's actually book 4 in a series. And so I can't wait to really dive into this world that you've created in the town of Juniper, Iowa. What a cool community in like a little bit scary way. At least from my experience in book 4, it's like, there's a lot going on in this town and I can't wait to dive into it. It just like, I just feel like this is an HBO series in the making. It's just so atmospheric, so many cool personalities, so many wild relationships that we have going on. So we're definitely going to get to dive in. But first, saying hello to our wonderful viewers who are joining us this evening. We've got DHB, we've got Sawdust, and we've got Susan. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much. As folks trickle in, Farmhouse Reader, hello, thank you. Feel free to share any questions that you have with us this evening. We always love hearing from our fabulous audience. But while everyone is getting settled, Winter, do you mind just introducing yourself briefly about, what kind of maybe what you were doing before your work as a mystery author, what brought you to writing, or how did your journey really take off and begin?
Okay, so Winter Austin is actually my pen name. So, and it's actually based off of the name that I was named after, ironically enough. So my mom was very interested in a soap opera that was called Edge of the Night, and one of the characters on there was named Winter Austin. I later learned it was Austin like Jane, spelled like Jane Austen, but it's fine. But ironically, in the end, it turned out she turned into a murderess. So how fortuitous. I turned into a mystery crime fiction, police procedural author. So, but yeah, my name always garners a bunch of questions, and it's unique enough. And so I guess it was just in the stars that I needed to be an author of something, But I literally got my start in this when I was very, very young. I decided I was going to be an author when I was in like 4th grade. And and that I attribute to the great Walter Farley. Reading his Black Stallion series, I was very into horses, like every girl in rural Iowa, farm kid, whatever. And so I read about his bio, how he ended up becoming an author. And I was like, oh, I was going to do that. Well, I didn't sign a contract when I was in my 20s. It was much later than that, but, it was close. So I took a hiatus there for a while, grow up, go through school and everything. And then I got married and had my first set of kids, which I had twin boys. And ironically, today is their birthday.
Oh, happy birthday to them.
Yeah. And so, yeah, and they're 27. And they're probably not very appreciative that their mother is telling everybody that. But so after they were born, and my husband was finishing college, and I was stayed home with the kids. I was like, I picked back up the pen and I started writing again, and it was a mystery. And so it's been kind of in my blood to do that, but I had to kind of go the roundabout way that a lot of my favorite authors ended up doing. They went through the romance genre first to get into what they wanted, and that's kind of how I did it. In 2012, yeah, 2012. We switched markets because I was initially in the inspirational market trying to sell stuff there, and it was not going. I was too gritty. I was too dark, and I was like, well, that's reality, people. So my agent at the time moved me into the regular market, and we sold my first series right away, and it was to Crimson Romance, which was a sub, I can't think of the word I want to use, of Adams Media at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so we published that one. It was more romantic suspense, but it was a continuancy series, so it followed the same couple through the entire series, which was 4 books. Ended that, then started another series set in Iowa. So this was my first series set in Iowa, and it was a romantic suspense too, but it moved more towards mystery, more thriller. The romance was there, but it wasn't as strong as the other elements to it. And then Crimson Romance was bought out by Simon and Schuster, and then we were there for about a year, and then Simon and Schuster closed the doors, and then I was left homeless. So, which was fine because at that point I was going through a lot of eye surgeries and stuff, so I wouldn't have been able to see or do anything writing wise. But I listened to a lot of audiobooks, which turned my love over. You know, if I couldn't read it, I was going to listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
So then in 2019, so my editor is Julie Sturgeon, and she was my editor at Crimson. And she moved to Thule after Crimson's doors were shut. I think she was about a year after or less. And I literally followed her. And I asked her. And so I presented some stuff, and they chose my series that is now the Benoit and Dayne Mystery series on a blurb and an idea. That was all it was. I didn't have that book done. I didn't know how it was going to go. I was just like, I'm moving a female sheriff into a department after we kick out a corrupt one. You know, it was originally going to be set in Louisiana. I changed my mind, moved it to Iowa, and created Juniper and Eckert. And there you go. So and that was 2019. And The Killer and Me was published in 21. So I had a whole year. And
Nice.
That's when COVID hit. So I had a lot of time on my hands. I wasn't at work as much, so I was able to actually write. But I drew that one out. But that was agony. I'm moving from writing a romantic type of book to there is no romance in this book. If there is, it is like a subplot of a subplot of a subplot. You know, so, and I think that was Julie's first time. I was Julie's first author to get her doing mysteries, and now she's head of the mystery department at Thule. And so, yep, we're cranking them out.
Well, we have a question from one of our viewers for you, Winter. Do you live in Iowa now, or did you go there for research, or what's the connection to Iowa?
Iowa born and bred, and I live in the very area that I am describing in that series. So I'm taking little bits and pieces of the county that I grew up in, the county that was next door to, and the county that I live in, and that my husband's family has been. So Iowa is very well ingrained. In fact, we are staunch Iowa State fans. So, and that's where my husband went to school. But the rest of our family, they're Iowa fans, but we disowned them. So.
Just say you kind of got some Hawkeye colors going on there.
I know, but it's Yellowstone, so.
Well, you know, Winter, I just have to say, you know, I don't want to get too far ahead of the game here, but I've been listening to Requiem for the Dead, folks. And as the book opens, it is set right about this time of year, late February. And I got to tell you here, Winter, I'm in Indianapolis, and the weather you're talking about, setting the scene in Requiem for the Dead, is like exactly like what we've got right now. And it was just like, oh my God, I could so identify with everything that's going on. And it was just, it's like, I'm sure everybody like me we're ready for that real March finally break for good. So, it was just, I just had to comment that it was like, okay, yeah, I know exactly how, the snow and the cold and all that is like, yikes.
And ironically, I was writing that during the summer. So I was like, okay, I got to remember how February felt like a couple months ago. And so, yeah.
Well, you did a fabulous job, because when I try to like lock those memories in my, like, I don't want to think about the winter months when it's summertime. So it was like just so atmospheric with the writing. And I have to make a note that the next time that I need to go searching for character names is I just have to go watch a soap opera, because there are really cool like everybody on soap operas has like such great names. And I love that origin story, and the fact that you're now writing these twisting mysteries with, in this particular installment, we've got a lot of dead bodies that are being found around Juniper, and we have they're not maybe all dying at the same time, but like, whoa, big body count. But I want to back up to this. You're starting this mystery series. You're going to your editor with a blurb and an idea. How did these two very strong women, how did they come to you? And how did you know that they were the duo that you wanted to focus this series on?
I don't know if it was I knew when I started this one, I was not going to have any male POVs. And I write very, very strong female characters. And I literally put a piece of myself in each of those female characters. And so the decision to do that, the back and forth with just Lila and Elizabeth or Ellie, was pretty easy for me, because that was the whole focus. And I didn't have anybody need to tell me, well, you really do need to have a male POV. And I was like, no, I don't. These two are carrying the series. And the very first meeting between the two is Elizabeth hiring Lila onto the sheriff's department. And this is after Elizabeth has been, she's only like a couple weeks into being sheriff, because she just got newly elected. And she's a woman who's never done this before. So I had to remove all of what I knew about police work from all the previous research and all the stuff I did with Elizabeth, and literally bring her in as an unknown. And I mean, she has some knowledge of it, but she has never practiced it at all. And then I had to bring somebody in who knew what they were doing. And so here comes Lila. But Lila comes with a lot of baggage. And hopefully here I can explain where that baggage comes from, because she's from Chicago. And in book 2, Hush My Darling, you find out what actually happened to her, because she had a head-on collision with a serial killer. And that made her leave Chicago and come to Iowa, because she was just trying to get away and recover and become, did she really want to stay in police work, or, what she want to do? And so I have done pretty much a lot of my characters have had some kind of military background or some kind of traumatic incident. And with her, it was easy. I write PTSD really well, partly because I've had PTSD experience on my own. And I have talked with a lot of people who, especially combat veterans or people who've been in the service, and I can recognize it. And my PTSD is like, it's nothing compared to what like a combat veteran might have had, or somebody who's been through a violent attack or something, but it's still the same. You know how to pull out those emotions and pull it into a character. And so I get to do that with Lila. And with Elizabeth, it was more trying to make her kind of naive, but yet very smart. She's smart enough to know that she's naive in this whole thing, so she surrounds herself with people who can help her. Mm-hmm. And she's been doing it long enough. By book 4, she knows what she's doing. Problem is now she's butting heads with people that she's been relying on for a long time, because she's not making decisions that they think she should be making. And so that's going to, result in what happens through a requiem for the dead.
Well, I just want to, sorry for interrupting, Sarah, but I just want to say thank you for being so honest about and talking about PTSD, because anybody who's watched the show knows that Sarah and I are very open about the fact that, mental health is something we all need to be aware of, and we need to be looking out for ourselves and others. So thank you for doing that. And so that kind of brings up, I thought, one of the things that was really interesting early on in Requiem for the Dead, that Lila comes across a certain scene where there is an exchange where she is really clear with one of the fellow detectives, like, no, this, I'm going to let you talk about it, but this is bad, but this is not the work of a serial killer. And I thought that was just a really clever way to do a really clearly valuable callback to her history that, is just a reason why, folks, after you read book 4, you need to go back and read books 1 through 3, or you could start with book 1 and go up through 4, however you work, but regardless, you need all 4 of them. So could you kind of set the scene of what's going on with this particular story? Because that particular scene out in the middle of a remote field, in late February, that's not even the beginning. Other bad stuff is already
yeah. Yeah. So when you open the book, you're in one POV, which is the medical examiner, Olivia Remington Thorpe. And then you don't know what happens to her. And then we move into Elizabeth. And, well, hold on. Let me think about that. It's been a long time since I read the book. I'm trying to remember my steps here.
I think it's Lila and the call out.
Right, hold on a second. Hold on.
And while you're doing that, Winter, really quickly, Lila. One of our viewers did also want to chime in, saying thanks to Winter for mentioning PTSD and JC for acknowledging it. So thank you, Susan. We appreciate your appreciation.
Yes.
Thank you. So the next you move into Lila, and it's one of these weird things. I wrote the beginning of this book 5 times, and it was 5 different things.
Wow.
I did not really know where I was going to go. I knew something big had to happen, and something had to happen to Olivia. And it all stems back to her husband in some form or fashion. By the time idea number 5 came around, it was like, okay, this is what it is. Lila sent out to a random spot out in the middle of nowhere by a local farmer who found a disturbing scene because she had a loose cow. And she calls the sheriff's department. Well, Elizabeth's been gone. No one except the undersheriff knows where she's at. And she's supposed to be recovering from the events that happened in book 3. And then so Lila and her usual partner, Brent Meyer, go out to this spot, and they walk upon a field of bones. And there's enough snow on the ground, you don't see all of the bones. You just see what's still at the top. And they're pure white. And so they don't know how long that's been there. So you're looking at this, and if you have done enough research, watched enough true crime, listen, like Mind Hunters, what is a serial killer going to do? A serial killer is usually, they're brazen, but they're not that brazen where they just leave it where people can find it. Not that this was easy to find, but Lila just doesn't get that sense. Having been the victim of a serial killer, had the fallout from that, and chased one down, which I don't want to give away book 2. I can't give any more reasons for it. It just didn't feel right. To her, it almost felt like, being from Chicago, they all know the old style gangs, the mob, the mafia, whatever. she felt like maybe this was just like these people were just brought out here and then shot and then left. To her, that felt more like it than a serial killer. But when you bring in all of the extraneous characters that have to come along to make things happen, when she starts hearing from a forensic anthropologist her idea that this is not a serial killer thing, it's something different. And then you find this weird tunnel that goes from this shack that's just sitting there and it goes out. So this backs up to a tributary that connects with the Des Moines River. This was very hard for me. I spent a lot of time on Google Maps during this book. I probably spent more time on Google Maps going up and down the river looking at the satellite than I did writing. And it drove me nuts. But I was like, I've got to find the right places, make sure these things fit and work for what I want it to do. And I was like, when did the lock and dam system start? So I had to go back and find out. Okay, I can't start here. I got to go further south. So then, as they're progressing through, they're doing the police work, they're doing the footwork. Lila's doing her thing, which she's one of these very analytical people. She's like, let me analyze it. Don't talk to me. Let me process everything and I will come to these, but I'm not going to let you know what I think it is until I have the proof of what I think it is, whether it's right or wrong. And so I spent a lot of time. And then there was a lot of researching the things that happen through the book, like how do these bones become bones so quickly? Because they're not that old, and then, of course, I was talking with a guy that I work with. He was like, he'd gone hunting. He had a deer head and he took it to this gal who used dermestid beetles to clean the bones off so they could do the taxidermy on it. And I was like, that could work. And they're very easy to get. If you have the right reason, you can get them and you can breed them and boom. I'm like, that'll work. So, and I was like, that is the fastest one. And so there is a scene further on where the gals, the deputies, Lila and one other deputy, come face to face with these beetles.
Ooh.
So, yeah.
Well, I just got to say real quick here, as I'm reading or as I'm listening, early on, we've got a boneyard, we've got a creepy cabin, we've got an even creepier tunnel underneath. I'm thinking like this is a Scooby-Doo story for grown-ups. And anybody that knows me knows that is, you don't get much higher praise than a Scooby-Doo comparison. So I just want to throw that out there.
Well, I know there's a certain gal that she was the gal that I dedicated the book one to. She's a girl that we are really good friends with the family. She had a brain tumor that was discovered when she was very young, like 2017, I think was when that happened. And she is a enormous Scooby-Doo fan.
Oh.
So she would really, really enjoy that. She's also a Darth Vader lover too. So you don't want to walk around her. She will try to give you the whole, suffocate you thing. But but I did grow up watching Scooby-Doo, so, All right.
Well, it sounds like, Winter, you did a incredible amount of research while you were writing this novel. And one thing that I would love to kind of pick your brain about a little bit more is actually the police procedural aspect, because when we meet Elizabeth in book 4, she's established herself as the sheriff. She has the respect of everybody on her team. But you had mentioned that when she's brought in, she's never done anything like this before. So how does a sheriff become a sheriff in Juniper, Iowa?
So the nice thing is I already had that back history for myself with the research. I do have some really good friends who are police officers. One is a sheriff's deputy, so I could always pick his brain if I needed to. But for Elizabeth, I wanted her to be kind of very a knowledgeable type of person. So she was married to Joel. I just blanked on his name. Fontaine. And he was in the military, and they graduated high school. He enlisted, she followed him, and they got married, and she spent the next 20 some years being a military wife, an army wife, which left her with a lot of time because they're bouncing around the world from base to base because he became a Delta operative, which he's still with his original unit, as I have learned, because I had to learn about Delta operatives. But he could be, if they needed him for something, off he went, and he could never tell her what he was doing, but she's smart enough to figure it out. Mm-hmm. She knew. So in her times being alone, she decided she was going to study law of some sort, because when a couple years after they were married, her very, very best friend from high school mysteriously died. Oh. And this is what comes into book 3. But she knew that her friend didn't overdose, which was the narrative. That was what was being told. She knew something went wrong. That there's no way that her friend would overdose. There's no way. So her whole goal in life was to learn enough about the law, learn enough about whatever she needed to do, so if she ever came home, she could prove this. Well, she comes home, gets divorced, decides her and Joel, she's done, gets divorced. She inherits the dog, which I can't write a book or a series without animals in it. So my favorite little, this time I chose to do a red border collie. And at the time that I was writing the book, we had a border collie. And then she passed away. Aww. And she was dedicated to in book 2, because I was writing that when we had to put her down because she had cancer. But so Elizabeth comes home. In the opening scene of book 1, you have her being sequestered away in this nice little cozy kitchen with a matriarch of the community who was her teacher at one point, her son, who is a mayor, Rafe, who soon becomes Elizabeth's undersheriff, who is a deputy, and they pretty much pressure Elizabeth into running to be sheriff because they want to kick out the corrupt sheriff that's there. And so Elizabeth was kind of like, I don't know if that's the way I want to do it. And they said, for Brendette, you need to do this. And she's like, there you go. That's the way. Because then she could have access to the case files and she could check in on these things. And so that was why she chose that path. She got lucky because people wanted her to. And she also got lucky that people were just fed up with Kelly Sheehan, who was the sheriff at the time, and his hinky ways. So Julie has fallen in love with Kelly. I'll never be able to get rid of him. I kind of like him. He's the perfect antagonist to Elizabeth. He's just enough of a corrupt, like underhanded type of person to know how to get away with it and not get caught. But he's just still got that heart of gold that maybe he's not all that bad, so, but so it helped that. And in Iowa, like a lot of states, the sheriff's position is an elected position. You don't have to have law enforcement in your background. It's preferred. I mean, because it makes it easier.
Yeah.
But you end up spending more time doing administrative stuff and talking with your community leaders and county councils and things like that. But if your department's small enough, you could end up having to do some like legal law enforcement type of stuff. But a lot of times they're able to hire deputies who have to have, we have a whole academy here in Iowa, and I'm sure every state does, that you have to go through to even become a deputy. You cannot become a deputy until you go through the academy.
That's such an interesting, and thinking about that from, other states or other positions within states, like the coroner is sometimes somebody that's elected and they don't even need medical training. And it's like, that's a little odd. And so I'm always fascinated about like how, the politics of it all kind of bubbles down into the actual like law enforcement side of it.
Well, ironically, the state of Iowa is a coroner state.
Mm-hmm.
But in this book, we still have MEs. Typically, they're in our bigger cities. But we have an ME network. So there is an ME assigned to a certain district. And that I had to make sure I was doing that okay. I thought I'm going to be taking fictional license with this, but I was okay.
Mm-hmm.
Which is what Olivia is she is legitimately a medical examiner. She doesn't have to be a coroner, and she's an actual doctor. So, so that helped with that. But yeah, in my other series that I wrote before this one, it was set in Iowa, and it was a coroner, but he was a doctor too. I made him work in the local hospital. A lot of times our coroners are doctors for certain, or morticians. So yeah, which is what my oldest son is doing right now. He's finishing up his mortician's science degree. But he's my child that just after mama's old heart. He's got a very macabre sense of humor and all this stuff. He's also followed his dad into the military, but he was either going to be a cop, a forensic something or other, or a coroner. And I'm like, there you go, dude. But he's leaning more and more towards the forensic pathology too of that. So
wow,
that's back onto his degree.
That's such a fascinating and incredible field. And speaking of forensic pathology, I do want to make sure, because our time is flying by very quickly, Winter, that we let our viewers know that you are generously doing a giveaway this evening for a signed paperback copy of Book 4, Requiem for the Dead. And would you like to tell our wonderful viewers what the magic word is that they can type into the Google chat to enter in to the giveaway?
It is bones.
Bones. So many bones in this book. So many.
Yeah.
And
we're
folks,
not talking about the Emily Deschanel series, by the way. Great series, but that's not what we're talking about.
And folks, make sure if you're watching us that you're logged into either your Gmail, your YouTube, your Google account, so that you can type into the chat and enter in the magic word, so that we will draw a name at the end of our episode. So, Winter, as folks are entering into the giveaway, let's talk a little bit more about the relationships that you have in this book, or really in this series, because I think you had mentioned earlier in the show that, when you switched to writing mystery, that you could absolutely like not have romance be like a main theme. It would be like the subplot of a subplot. But you know what? Like, it's life, and we love, people love love, and we love seeing those relationships develop. Has there been one in the series that you've been particularly surprised yourself with about how it's going? And could you maybe share a little bit about that, about the two people that are involved within that?
I think the initial one was Lila and Kyle. And that's Kyle Lundquist. She wasn't supposed to have a romantic interest, especially after what happened to her. And at the end of book 1, it just came out of nowhere. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to run with it. And in fact, one of my beta readers is my very, very best friend. And she goes, anytime I write a scene with those two in it, she loves it, because there's always going to be that push and pull, these little comments thrown back and forth. She calls him Viking because, he's tall, he looks like a Viking, but he went into the Navy and he came back home. The oddity of the whole thing is that, he was young enough that, Elizabeth babysat him. So now he's working for the gal that used to babysat. So, but his sister was Elizabeth's best friend. Brendette was his older sister. So he got into police work because of her sister too. But that one was the most surprising. I was really not planning on having Lila have any kind of romantic interest because of, and you have to read book 2 to understand. I'm not going to ruin it, but surviving an attack by a serial killer, which is, that's not something that it's not a big secret because that's kind of the main theme through 1 and 2. She wasn't supposed to be romantically interested in anybody, and, but she still struggles because, he hasn't decided if he wants to make the full commitment. She doesn't know if she wants to make the full commitment. There's that. I always knew Elizabeth was going to connect with Rafe because that is a long time history thing. And, there's been comments made by people in their community that she married the wrong brother, so Rafe is younger than them, but not by much. But, so that was, by the time she came home, that which was already established before just, kind of strengthened. But he kind of put the brakes on for a very long time because there's that perception, it's a little bit more lax now in this day and age. You can kind of date within the department type of thing. But Rafe is so old school, he didn't want to ruin Elizabeth's chances for re-election or whatever if this was hanging over her head. And in book 4, he just, because of Lila, he said, screw it, whatever. And so that's, but I'm not going to give any more away, but it's kind of fun because Rafe and Lila don't like each other well enough. So they're always going to be butting heads, but she's comfortable enough around him to literally put him in his place, and which nobody else will. So I was like, she stands like 5'4", and he's like, 6 foot something. And here's this little gal just giving it to him because, and he respects her enough to know that what she's been through, but he's still going to give her crap.
That's one of the things you really pick up really quick on, and this isn't a spoiler because it happens early. But when we first have in book 4, we have Lila and the Viking, their first exchange is like, okay, yeah, these two don't really see eye to eye here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then in the beginning of book 4 is, like I said, it carries over from book 3. The way that book 3 ended, Kyle was very, very much affected by what happened at the end of that book, and so he kind of pulled away from Lila, which in her case she would have seen herself do, which is kind of what she did for a little bit after the events of book 2 ended. But she's also to the point where she's like, I've lived my life a certain way, I'm done doing that now, I'm going to be in your face now. So, and she's from Chicago, so she's got to have a little bit of that Chicago, I'm going to punch you before I talk to you type of thing. So, and I just like that. I also love the back and forth that I give between Elizabeth and Joel. They're exes, and this is where the fun of being around the military for a very long time and being married to a military guy, I get to use Joel to talk like they talk. And in book 4, there is a scene between Joel and Elizabeth, and she literally throws back comments that normally he would have said, and it throws him because it's like, you're not supposed to say that. And it's not a sexist thing. It's just the fact that she was never in the military. So, and I'm like, yeah. And she's like, whatever, I'm going to do what I want to do.
I really like the chemistry that Joel and Elizabeth had. Like, I think that they become good friends, and I appreciated their camaraderie with one another, and where Joel is kind of like encouraging her to come on, like my brother's waiting for it. Like I really appreciated his presence. Winter, I'd love to know a little bit more about your writing process itself, because you do a lot of research, whether it's looking at, places along the river of where you need to like position these happenings so that everything can work the way that you want it to. The how things work from a procedural standpoint, all of that good stuff. How do you approach writing a scene? Are you someone that you are, you don't need to plot a whole lot, you just kind of sit down and go with it? Or are you someone that you structure how you approach these different instances in a very strategic manner?
Hey, there's no strategy. None. I am the pantser of pantsers of
Wow.
pantsers.
I would never have guessed that.
Oh yeah, so the very first time that I think it was the very first time I met Julie and my other acquisitions editor at Crimson. It was at RWA, and you get the name badges and you can put little ribbons on the bottom. And I had the pantser one, and we had a meeting, and I walked up there, and both of them are looking at me, and they're looking at that, and they go, "The way you write, we would have never guessed that."
Yeah.
And I'm like,
nice.
That's the way it is. I can't write an outline. I absolutely refuse. I can write off a blurb. I'm okay with blurb, because blurb is just a couple paragraphs, maybe even a paragraph. But if I have to write the synopsis for the book before I write the book, I won't write the book, because to me, I already did it, and there's nothing to go off of. I tried to remind myself I'm not locked in on how I wrote the synopsis, but I can't do it. I have so many book ideas that I've already written out in synopsis, and I'll never touch them because I just can't do it. So if I'm being honest with people, I say I'm more of an organic pantser. I let the characters tell me how the scene's going to roll. If I end up in a deadlock, that dreaded writer's block, it's because I wrote something I'm not supposed to be writing, period, or it's too soon for this scene. So I pull it out, put it in a special file called deleted scenes, and then I go back and I start over from where I was. So it is very chaotic, and there have been days where I'm sitting there staring at the screen going, what is next? And my husband's always going, you're not writing. I'm like, it's not coming to me. And then I think he's rubbed off on me, because he is a phlegmatic type of personality. He is a procrastinator of procrastinators. And so I'm getting to the point where I'm looking at the dead end of the deadline, and I'm going, I'm not far enough in this book. I'm not going to make this deadline. I'm going to make this deadline. That's what happened in this last book that I just finished. I mean, I literally turned in a book to Julie that I didn't even edit. I finished it on the day that it was due, and I said, here you go.
Wow.
Have fun. She goes, there's not a whole lot to do. And I go, oh my gosh, really? I know there's more to do with it. I really do. So, because there were things that I kind of thought of later that I wanted to go back and fix. But Requiem for the Dead, I made the deadline. I gave myself to finish the book, and then I had a month to go through it and edit it. And that was probably the cleanest book I have ever turned in. And it didn't need a lot of work. It needed a little bit of work. But But believe me, I've given myself heart palpitations sometimes I'm sitting here going, I've got to write something that's almost, 75 to 78,000 words long. And I don't know if I'm going to make it, but I always end up making it. So.
And that, folks, is the magic of the creative process. We all do it our own different ways, and there's no right way and there's no wrong way. And again, I guess this is my night to be thankful. Thanks for sharing that with us also, Winter, because again, Sarah and I talk a lot about the fact I'm very much a plotter. I need to do that. Sarah does that a lot too. And so it's always fun I think, and I shouldn't speak for Sarah, but sorry, Sarah, I'm going to. It's fun and enlightening to hear stories like yours, because again, it's a great reminder that we all do it the way that works for us.
Yeah. And it's always, I don't follow any one set of rules, and granted, there are really no rules when it comes to fiction writing. It's, as a lot of people say, there's kind of like guidelines. And I'm like, no, there's no guidelines for me. I might pick a little bit, like I take a James Bell type of idea with the act one, act two, act three, type of thing. I write towards scenes. So I let that ferment in my brain where I'm writing to. So I come up with something and I'm like, okay, this is what I got to get from point A to point B. And then I got to get from that point to that point. So my imagination does a lot of work. And with the amount of driving time that I have to and from work, a lot of that gets done while I'm driving. But here in the last year or so, it's been listening to podcasts or audiobooks instead, because the new series that I'm doing is on fugitive recovery or bounty hunters.
Ooh.
And I found a podcast that bounty hunters from Georgia had made. And so I've been listening to that as my research, along with, books and stuff that I found to read. But so it's, oh man, I don't wish my process on anybody.
Well, JC he said, it's fun and enlightening for us to hear. I'm sitting here like, again, my mind is just like completely boggled that you wrote this book without like having it meticulously planned, because there are so many like threads that you're pulling through it. And it's just like, I am in awe that that you were able to write this just like sitting down and writing it. Like that to me is truly, truly incredible. Yeah. So I am amazed.
Well, I am very, they always say there's plot driven books and there's character driven books. Mm-hmm. And my books are both. But it's my characters who tell me what's going on. They let me know, okay, so this chapter, who's going to be in it? Who's leading this chapter? What's my inciting, what's my opening here? How are we going to end this? What's going to happen in this one? I never know. I'm writing along, and all of a sudden I decide, oh, we're going to have a shootout. Okay. Why are we having a shootout? I don't know. So yeah, we're slowing down too much. We need a dead body. So come up with a dead body. But yeah, like I said, I don't wish my process.
It is amazing. And as we're kind of moving into the final stretch of our bookish hour together, folks, I want to remind our wonderful audience members to enter into a giveaway for a signed paperback copy of A Requiem for the Dead. The magic word to enter into the giveaway is bones. So make sure you type that into the Google chat to get your name on the list. Real quickly, Winter, do you mind sharing a little bit about this future project that you've kind of teased? Like what's next for you in the writing world?
Writing book 2 in that series.
Oh, wow.
So we have a title for it and the series name. So it's going to be called A Bounty of Shadows.
Ooh.
We're coining it as suspense, but this thing reads as a thriller. And then the first book's title is Ride the Dark Trail. So I am pulling on my old love of the Westerns, but it's modern day. And I decided, this is where research comes in. I decided I'm going to create a Basque character, and her name is Dot Ybarra, or Dorothy, named after her grandmother. And but her grandfather is Basque, and they come from the Basque area of Idaho. And so I'm delving into that, and it's a very fascinating culture. I mean, I want to get out there and just go immerse myself in it, which is what I did for the Cajun culture. I went down to Louisiana and just kind of immersed myself into it. but she's the only daughter of the Basque her family. Her mother never married. Dot doesn't even know who her father is, and her mother refuses to talk about him. Her grandfather passed away. She enlisted in the Army and became a helicopter pilot. And she got out, and this is where the mom in me is a little my son was deployed when we had the Afghan withdrawal, and so he was there. I mean, he wasn't in Afghanistan, but he was in Kuwait. And so I decided Dot got out after the Afghan withdrawal, and she was there when it happened. So she was there at the bombing of Abbey Gate. And so she was done. But she came home. She was listless, didn't know what to do. So she decided to get into the Forest Service and fly helicopters for forest fires. Got in an accident. Miraculously lived from that crash, because it was one I looked up. I'm like, can this happen? It can. She had the helicopter where they had the bucket, and it got caught on a tree and sent the helicopter down. But the ones that I researched and found out about, they did not survive. But it's fiction. I'm going to take license, so she did. But kind of hurt her. And then I decided, well, and this has been something that I went to Indianapolis in 2022, and met up. Well, I went there. My husband was teaching FFA, and they went there for the National FFA Convention, and I got to go along as a backup chaperone. And Julie, my editor, lives in just south of Indianapolis, and I said, let's meet up. And she's like, sure. So we talked books, and I had mentioned it a long time ago that I kind of wanted to do a bounty hunter series with a female lead, and that's what we talked about, except it was going to be a guy. I think this was before we brought you in, JC, at Thule.
Yeah.
We didn't have enough male authors, and we didn't have enough male voices in the books, and so they all knew that I could do it. So I thought, okay, so I presented this idea. No, didn't like it. I'm like, okay, we won't mess with it. We'll just continue on with Benoit and Dayne. And then I was like, but I really want to do this book. And Julie's like, I really want you to do this book. So restructured it, decided Dot's going to be the main character. And Jane Porter, who is the owner, creator of Thule Publishing, is always about, as Julie puts it, putting a hat on it. And I said, well, let's put a hat on a girl. And presented it with Dot as the main character in this bounty hunting series, and Thule said, let's go.
Nice.
And so it took us a while to come up with a name for it, because it was just like, we didn't know, but we wanted bounty in the name. So I let them run with that, and they came up with that, and I'm like, perfect. And then I threw a bunch of title ideas at them, and I was looking at old Western book titles, because I wanted it to have that Western feel, because this takes place in Idaho, in the mountain areas. And I mean, when people think of bounty hunting, everybody thinks Old West bounty hunters, and it's not even the same. But anyway, so then we came up with a Ride a Dark Trail. So now we got that done. We're going to get through that, get the cover and everything. And now I got to get book 2 going. So, nice. And it's due at the end of May. So I'm running out of time.
As we've learned, you will definitely meet your deadline, because your method is nothing short of genius. So you have no fear. You're gonna be fine. You're gonna be totally fine.
That old saying, there's a fine line between genius and insanity, and I read it.
Well, Winter, for our last few minutes together, what we like to do with the end of each show is like to share with our viewers what we're reading, what we're watching, what we're listening to. It sounds like you've got a lot of good podcasts and audiobooks to share with us. So if there are any that are top of mind for you, what are you listening to? What has been really capturing your attention lately?
For audiobooks, I just finished Bruce Borges's book, Bitter Past, I think was what it was called. It was the first book in his Porter Beck series. Fabulous book. I can't wait to listen to the next two. And I have been going through doing the audio versions of the C.S. Harris Regency Mystery series, the Sebastian St. Cyr series.
Mm-hmm.
I've read most of them, but I decided because I love the narrator in this series. She does a fantastic job with it. And I think I can't think of the book title at the moment that I'm on right now. So I just started that one. That's one of those ones, if I fall asleep listening to it or get distracted and don't listen to it, I back it up and go back to where I last remembered paying attention and listen to it again. Some other books, I might just let it play on through and don't care and just keep on going. But that one is one, because it's a fabulous series and I love it. For podcasts, the Bounty Hunter series that I've been listening to off and on when I need to just refresh the research is called Wanted. They only did it up to like 3 or 4 seasons. I think they ended around 2019, 2020, and they haven't done anything new, but there's enough information in there and it's fabulous for what I need. It's giving me ideas for what happens with Dot and her partner in that series. And then for TV watching, it's whatever's on Netflix that I haven't watched. I kind of got into The Crown finally. So
Oh, wow.
I'm watching that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm missing it tonight, but that's okay. My husband and I are avid Will Trent watchers, even though I've read all the books and I know they don't even follow. The TV series is actually very fabulous and my husband loves it. So, and I said, but you should read the books. Really, you should read the books. I said, but don't read anything of Karen Slaughter's that is not part of the series. You won't. Stay away from that. And then, let's see. My husband just texted me. Anyway.
I know that we have a lot of Will Trent fans in our audience. They we've got some folks that really love watching that show.
And then tomorrow, which we got to decide if we're going to do this, the 3rd season of Reacher releases on Amazon Prime. And I was watching that, and I love Alan Rickman as Jack. He does a fabulous job. And it was about first 2 episodes of the season 2. I got my husband on it, and so now he wants to watch it. And so those are some of my favorite ones. But I, randomly will watch like Ghost, if we want something funny, Ghost, or we got into Georgie and Mandy's first marriage after the Young Sheldon show ended, and some random things. The other thing that I love watching certain anime shows. So I've watched all the Castlevanias, Dragon Blood. What's the other one? I'm waiting for the new, it's the Greek god one. I can't remember the title of it. They're supposed to release season 2 here pretty soon. But I literally binge watched Castlevania Nocturne when season 2 came out. I finished watching it when I was recovering from being sick. I'm like, this released, I'm watching it. So I binge watched that.
Nice.
Yeah. And then, but we got into Grimmsburg. If you've never watched that, that's on Fox on Sunday nights. It is hilarious. John Hamm is the voice of the main character. He's a detective in this town that is very gruesome and it's hilarious. And during the intro, after the song gets done, they always go up to the sign, and the sign has a different, saying at the end of it. So it's pretty fun.
Nice. Those are a lot of great recommendations. And JC, real quickly, what are you listening to? What are you watching?
So I just want to send a shout out to, I listened to Dead Trees Give No Shelter. It's a book both written and narrated by Will Wheaton. I found it on Bandcamp. I thought it starts out as a murder mystery and then delves into some other pretty freaky things. So it was really, really interesting. I really enjoyed it. And then as part of Oscar season, watched Wallace and Gromit: Vengeance Most Foul the other night and absolutely loved it because they're just so much fun. So that's what I've got. Sarah, how about you?
I would say listening wise for podcasts, I don't know what rock I've been living under, but I discovered the Up and Vanish podcast, which just is the most incredible true crime, investigative story I've ever listened to, been a part of. It's a case that unfolds in real time. They catch somebody, they go to trial. It's the wildest journey ever. Very much recommend it. And also listening to a show called Money Crimes and learning more about financial crimes that are out there, how to avoid them, but also some of the biggest con artists in history and just the wild things that people have done. And then movie wise, we watched Nosferatu over the weekend. And it was, we actually watched it for Valentine's Day. So that's the kind of people we are. It was weird, but it was cool. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a little bit too long, but it was good. It was a good creepy thing, especially now. I can't believe that we haven't talked about this more, but the fact that, I don't know if you've seen that they have DNA identified Jack the Ripper at long last.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I am just what a time to be alive. I just my mind is blown. I can't wait for whatever series comes out where they talk about that, because
it'll be a
it's so
docuseries
cool
on Netflix. So
yeah. I gotta, it's just pre-add it to my queue. But Winter, this has been so fabulous. I do want to make sure that we do our giveaway winner announcement. So while I am pulling up our winner for the evening, mind sharing where folks can find you online, stay connected with you, follow what's going on in your writing world.
You can get me. I'm not big on social media because I only have so much time in the day, and I have to maintain our social media at work too. So I'm on Facebook a lot, and you can get me at Winter Austin. Find me there. And then I have an Instagram page. It's IA Suspense Writer. And then I do a lot of stuff there. You get to see cute pictures of baby goats and things like that, because we're a show family, as you can tell. My daughter got us into show cattle, and now we're moving into the realm of show goats for my nieces. So there's always little agriculture stuff going on, but I kind of like put pictures up like that. And then I have my website, authorwinteraustin.com. You can go there and find links to all the places where my books are available. Some of them are I had to self-publish those, so they're available at Amazon and all other e-retailers. And then I'm also an author with Tergear Publishing, which is out of Ireland, and that's why I have my one series re-released. I do have two very military romantic thriller type books there. One day I'll finish book 3, hopefully finish that series, but when I have time, I don't know when that'll be. And then all of my Thule books. And watch there. I'm very active on Facebook and Instagram versus anywhere else. So keep me there.
So folks, you now know where to keep up and find Winter, so that once you read a Requiem for the Dead, you can ask her again, how did you write this book without outlining it? It is, again, oh my gosh, that's the biggest wow factor for me.
Don't melt your brain too much. Don't worry.
Our winner for this evening for the giveaway is Farmhouse Reader. Farmhouse Reader, congratulations. I am putting in our email address into the chat, so feel free, please, to email me your mailing address, and I'll shoot that on over to Winter so that you can get your giveaway prize delivered. Congratulations. Everyone, thank you so much for being here this evening. This was fabulous. Thank you to our wonderful viewers who are watching for the questions that we had from folks. We always appreciate you being able to pick our brain. And Winter, thank you for being here. It was like, it was so cool getting to meet Elizabeth and Lila and the world that they immerse themselves in. And I look forward to going back into the series so I can figure out all of their baggage, because they've got a lot of it.
Yeah. Definitely start with book 1. Forget to mention this. We are re-releasing the first 3 books through Harlequin's Worldwide Suspense, and they'll have new covers and everything. The Killer and Me comes out in May. Fabulous. And then subsequent after that. So watch for that.
Wonderful. More opportunities to read, which we love. For our viewers this evening, thank you for being here. We are going on a little bit of a break. We'll be back on March 12th March 13th, excuse me, with our guest, Linda Norlander. That'll be a bookish hour that we'll be having with Linda. And so for those of you who are on February break right now, I hope that you're enjoying time with your family. Everybody stay warm, stay safe, and most importantly, stay bookish. Bye, everybody. Have a great evening.
Thanks.